Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Welcome back, and of course October is Pastors Appreciation Month, and so we're having some local pastors in, but this particular guest is unique. I'm delighted to have with us our good friend Pastor Garris Elkins. He is the pastor for at least another week Living Waters Church here in Southern Oregon, and love this man. And he's also an author. He's got some books here we're going to give away. We'll talk about that in a moment. But how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, we need to explain. This is your last week as senior pastor.
It is.
And you felt like the Lord was helping you transition into something new. And I want to say, I've been around churches and church work and boards enough to know that few are handled as gracefully and as excellent as you've handled this.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a model because you knew God was moving you on. He gave you the opportunity to mentor your successor, which I think is very unique. And you're ready for it, I think.
Well,
Is Jan ready for it?
We are very ready for it. In fact, this goes back to 1998 when we were in Europe. And in 98, in the fall, the Lord gave us a 20-year template. We thought it was for Europe, but actually, lo and behold, it was for Medford, Oregon.
Wow.
And to the weekend, God has planned out the development of that 20-year plan in a gracious way. 5 years ago, I approached Ryan with the concept of him taking the church. And for the next 2 years, he and Kate would process that. When they said yes, 3 years ago, we let the leadership team at the church know. And then 2 years ago, I moved Ryan from what he was doing with youth and our Anthem School of Ministry, and I said, I want to make you what they would call in the church world an executive pastor, but we didn't use that term. Okay. It sounded too businessy. And I said, I want you to create the model of ministry that you're going to inherit. For these next 2 years that I'm the senior pastor, under my authority, you have complete authority to restructure this church in any way that you see fit. I don't want you to wear my armor. I don't want you to do it my way. I don't need to be in all the meetings, and I give you freedom because you know my heart and I know yours. And so Ryan is gifted in creating civilization. He has a gift to create the civilization of grace in a church. My ministry is more of a Joshua. So I opened up a doorway, and then I invited this young man in now to create a civilization, and it's just delightful to see. So this Sunday, we're taking our our weekend services and combining them into one service at 10:45. Be in prayer that we can get everybody in the building with video feeds and extra chairs. If it's good enough weather, we'll do it outside, but that's kind of iffy this time of year. Yeah. And then Ryan will become senior pastor, and then Jan and I are going to be on a loose leash on staff as teaching pastors. My next season, if I'm not careful, can be more busy than this one. In fact, in August, I was gone 4 out of the 5 Sundays around the nation doing conversations based on the book, A Good Place, about leadership transitions. Wow. And so 90% of what I'm doing right now is working with pastors, leaders, church boards, staffs, denominational people about how do you do a healthy transition, not to create the plan for you, but what's the journey of your heart in the transition, because the plans are a dime a dozen. They'll all work, right? But it's a journey of the heart. In all of this, early on I knew it was going to be a win at Living Waters when I gave the opportunity to Ryan, and he says, I'll do it under one condition. I said, what's that, Ryan? He says, if you stay. I said, well, I have no plans on going anywhere. And I said, however, let me say there will be 2 things that will make this sink or swim. One, if there's honor in the house. Yeah. And secondly, if I'm not the grumpy old pastor that wants to change things back. And I commit myself to not being that. So we laughed in our office, my office here a few weeks ago, when are the problems going to start? And it really has been a problem-free, gracious thing. And I think that's because God has given us a glimpse of what honor looks like.
This is remarkable because in my years of experience, I've seen pastors be asked to go or get voted out, and it's kind of like a public divorce. I mean, you mentioned that. I mean, it's kind of like, we're done with you. You're out of here. Go find something else. And I always thought, especially a pastor who's been there a long time, isn't there a role for that pastor inside the new leadership, if it can be done? And you're saying yes.
Yeah, I think it really can, as long as we understand that at some point we become spiritual parents.
Right.
I'm a spiritual father to many now, at age almost 65. By chronological age I am, but by ministry assignment, most of my contacts and invites that I get is to have a spiritual father come into the house and just look at the truth of the transition from different facets, and that's what a father does. Ryan said something early on, and
by the way, Ryan is Ryan Roden.
Ryan Roden and Kate Roden, both of them are going to take leadership.
Yeah, and I know Ryan's parents very, very well.
Yeah,
I know
great
Kate's
people.
parents as well, but
Yeah.
Dallas has served on our board here at theDove.
Great people.
Yeah.
When I grow up, I want to be like Dallas and Linda. They're just precious people.
Yeah.
But Ryan gave me he said, here's how I see this. And he said, you know, when families are young, they do Thanksgiving dinner at the young family's house. And then as the kids move out after a few years, mom and dad find that it's a challenge to do the Thanksgiving dinner, so it goes to the kids' house now after all those years. And mom and dad are asked to bring their green Jell-O salad. And it would not be Thanksgiving unless the green Jell-O salad was there. So Jan and I really feel our job is not to lead from the front, but to come back in kind of an oblique way and affirm leadership that emerges. And that doesn't mean that I have to have an understanding or agreement of everything that takes place. It means honor is not about agreement. Honor is about believing the best in the other person. So that's it.
Wow. So, having a pastor's heart, you're called to that.
Mm-hmm.
Is God calling you away from that?
I think in America we have a pastor role, a one shoe fits all. But we forget that Paul said there are apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. I believe those are present in every healthy local church. For me, my role has been more visibly in my writing prophetic. When I deal with churches, there's an apostolic flow in that, developing blueprints from heaven and showing people what the possibilities might be. For me, I ask the Lord, show me what I'm supposed to do. I like to function out of a word from God. And He showed me a small little round table in a big vast room. And I'm assuming the room was the room of possibilities. He said, no, here's your small table, and there's 3 things on it: mentoring, writing, and teaching. Those 3 things I'm asking you to do. And I'll show you to what degree. And there were not a lot of items on each of those plates. It just was very simple. So that's what I'm doing a lot of now. And for the last 2 years, we've built into the transition plan a lessening of my visible presence at the church, so that the new people that would come in this 2-year cycle before the transition would see Ryan more visibly than they would be seeing me.
How's the congregation handle this?
You know, unless everybody's
lying to you?
Yeah.
Go ahead and say it.
You know, unless everybody's just swore to secrecy, we really haven't had any negative things at all. It's because we've invited people to the conversation. We said early on, we don't know all that, we don't know everything that's going on. We want to learn together. And we've invited the congregation to have that conversation with us. And it's been very fruitful. It's honored them. There's not a nervous feeling in the church. There's just this mounting celebration. And like Kate Roden, Kate was our service host last week, and she says after the 26th of August, we won't have to use the word transition anymore. And a round of applause broke out in the church.
Yeah.
Because we're ready to do this. And Ryan and I had gone through probably the spiritual mantle transition about 6 months ago. I felt it the day it happened. And we're doing this long term for the church, not for Ryan and for me. We could have done this a long time before, but we're shepherds, and we want the people to walk through this at their pace, not at our pace. So,
when did you know that God was calling you out of pastoral ministry?
Before I came to Medford 15 years ago.
Okay. The only reason I asked that question, because I remember having this conversation with you, because you and I had some meetings early on as to how you came and all that, and I thought, boy, that's really interesting. Here's a guy taking a church that he's going to leave.
Well, the first week I was here in Medford, God said, start giving this thing away.
Okay.
And so immediately, I started giving...
but you're called to be the pastor.
Yes, by the design of our denominational structure and maybe even the perception of the people. So you have to deal with those 2 things and not throw them away. However, most of my job was releasing ministry and not defining how that ministry is going to look. I feel one of the weaknesses of American pastoral leadership is that we tell each department head what they should look like in the expression of their ministry. And then we cut them free, and we end up building what I call a totem pole form of ministry, where the guy on top has to die or fall off for change to happen.
Yeah.
And we only add to the bottom. Well, we took this whole leadership model, laid it down on its side, and I allow each of the gifts to move at their speed, and I don't have to move as fast as they do. I just resource their gift. And what we've seen is the release and the explosion of potential in our leaders.
Wow.
It's been exciting.
So, you think God's going to use this? I mean, you've modeled something here.
We're part of the Foursquare denomination, and I am being used that way for the process of thinking. We've got a lot of baby boomer pastors that are coming up against that it's time to retire, but they don't know to take the next step. And my ministry is just to release them in the church from the fear of what the future is. And that little book there, called A Good Place, says that God is taking you to a good place, so don't be afraid. And so this is something, they bought a few of those books to give out to our pastors who are thinking about transition, because you've got to seed transition before you plan for transition.
All right, I got to take a break here, but I want to ask you another question. Yep. The word retirement or quit you don't find in the Bible.
No.
It's an American concept.
It is. And some people...
The Bible says occupy till I come. So he either comes and gets you by the grave or he comes and gets you by rapture.
I agree. I'm not planning on... retirement's a funny word. Some people will use that with what's going to happen on the 26th of next weekend. But we don't use that. It's like they have no other concept that when you're done pastoring, there can't be anything beyond. But the model that I look at is the Apostle Paul. And all the other disciples, they never went on the porch and drank mint juleps for the rest of their life.
No, I don't think they did.
No, there's more. There's more. I'm right now mentally and spiritually and emotionally at the peak of my performance. And so I have never been so in tune with who I am. And then why would I check out then and go off somewhere and be sorry that I didn't contend for more ministry? I think God gives us that opportunity to create a new future. And when we come back from the break, let me explain the desires and the delight of God, which is actually the transition time.
All right, well, we're right back. Our special guest today is Pastor Garris Elkins. And by the way, last week, a senior pastor at the Living Waters, but next week, Ryan Roden takes over, but he's still around. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Pastor Garris Elkins. He is the pastor of Living Waters Church here in Medford, at least for another week. He's also an author. How many books have you written?
There's 4.
You got Prayers from God, Throne of God, Prayers from the Throne of God, God Whispers, A Good Place. This is about the leadership one, right?
Yeah, it's about transitions in life.
And then the Leadership Rock, A Journey of Life in Leadership. And God's actually using you right now in these books, not only as you living it, but you'll be sharing it.
Yeah.
We're going to give these away coming up in just a few moments. We'll tell you. All right, so you wanted to explain?
People ask about transition plans, and you can go to Barnes & Noble, go to the business section, pull a book off and plan something. But it's got to be deeper than that. The Lord took me to the scripture in Psalms where it says, delight yourself in the Lord and He'll give you the desires of your heart. And as I began to look at those words and unpack them in their original language, the word delight is an interesting word. It means to be pliable. Delight yourself, be pliable in the hands of God, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. Well, when I unpack that word desires, it means a request. So if I delight myself in God and remain pliable in His hands, that delight that's transformed will begin to inform and transform the desires that I have. And so out of those desires, I can ask for what I delight in. And I find that God has given me the desires of my heart. In fact, it was Kate Roden last week. Kate was again hosting the service, and I said, Kate, see all this out here? This is what I prayed for, that I could give that final ministry assignment away at its peak of wholeness and health, where there's joy in the house. And my pastor always said, give it away when it's the healthiest, and when you minister, leave them hungry. And I've never forgot those two things. We have pastors have a tendency to want to strain every little bit of juice out of the turnip, but it's not healthy leadership to do that, and neither you can ever really get all the truth out anyway. And then finally, I felt like, God, I know I'm supposed to go when this place is healthy and whole, and It's all about mercy, because Jan and I in our marriage and our ministry in life is an expression of God's mercy. There were times that we could have hijacked what God wanted to do, but He had mercy on us. And in that mercy, He created a place of honor. We've got our warts and blemishes like every church because we attend there. But we're excited for what God is going to do, because Ryan and Kate have all the gifts and capabilities to take the ministry wherever it needs to go.
In your 15 years, has your desires changed?
Yes. They have changed, and I would probably use an overused word, they've radically changed. My feeling is that every church exists to host the presence of God, not to evangelize the world. That's a byproduct of hosting the presence. And what happens when we put evangelizing the world ahead of hosting the presence, we'll miss the nuances that only the presence can give. And it's my desire that that happens in how we speak, how we minister with each other, how we have worship take place in the congregation, and how we relate to the community. Because every believer carries the fullness of God. I mean, inside you is apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, every gift of the Spirit. If I were to take you and parachute you into newly discovered Atlantis that emerged in the Bermuda Triangle, and parachuted you in there, you carry everything within you to develop that millions of people into the fullness of the church God intended them to be. Once one person got saved, it would be an unstoppable force.
Wow, that's quite a concept, because you're touching on something that I beginning to sense. We get a lot of calls here at theDove for help and all that. When we survey them, at least we have in the past, it's interesting, a vast majority, well in the 90% range, are from people who are already connected to a church. The reason they call us and not their pastor is for two reasons. One, they don't see their pastor as somebody they can get to, and two, they don't want their pastor to know they're in trouble.
Right.
Now, that tells me that there's a big difference between shepherding and evangelism.
Yeah.
I mean, you said hosting God's presence, that would be the form of shepherding versus evangelizing.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm wondering, people are wanting a shepherd. They want somebody that will listen and pray and be with them.
I think that whole concept of what Paul talked about, apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, teacher, has to be understood again by the church, because apostolic leadership downloads a blueprint from heaven. The prophet speaks to it. The evangelist recruits to it. The pastor creates the environment in which it can grow and be nurtured, and then the teacher takes it, explodes it up, and teaches all the minute details. If we've got that concept, we would never want to create a ministry that was just a teaching ministry only, because the pastoral nurturing environment is the only place what is taught can be fruitful. And we don't want to have ministry without a blueprint that's larger than us. And we don't want to have a ministry where the prophetic voice, not the ornery person in the church that we don't know what to call except we call him a prophet, but that person who encourages us to believe that that blueprint's possible in our midst. And so that's how I see it working. And when those are not functioning, somebody will go outside of that realm because they don't feel like they have that ability to openly and honestly share, because they're afraid they're going to get thrown away.
Do you think there is generational differences in the approach to ministry?
Yes.
And the reason I ask that question is we're spending a lot of money these days in marketing to reach a group of people who could care less. Does that make sense?
It does.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I think we need a dose of courage, because there are models of ministry that will offend the traditional church establishment that God is leading the church into. And my generation and your generation, I grew up very content to do church the way we used to do it, but this young generation is not content to do that, and I applaud them in their lack of content for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put essence of ministry, not the direction of ministry, because I want them to be the young Joshuas to go out and take new ground. And we're starting to see that in our fellowship of churches where well, I don't know how this is going to sit with some of the listeners, but the first pub church in America has been opened up in Portland, Oregon.
Right.
And it's a church that's two-tiered. It has a community ballroom upstairs where they'll have church services, and then downstairs every week they have a pub, a real pub. and all the proceeds go to take care of ministry, or needs in the community. Tens of thousands of dollars are being given back into the community. It's not a drunk fest. It's not a place where Aunt Mary's probably going to be real comfortable. But in the culture there, people are coming to Christ. Jesus is doing things beyond your wildest dreams in a niche that you and I might not feel like is our calling. So I heard here that there's a group of ladies that go to some of these dance bars that they have here, and they go and they minister to the women who dance there. They love on them. Their ministry there is not to get them to change, but to love on them so that change could be a possibility. So I think the church is coming into a season of renaissance, and I'm excited for it. I'm very content to preach on Sunday morning and a midweek service and be the guy that is the father of the house. But I also need to realize that God has something else He's doing in the church that is very, very different than we've ever seen before, but the Spirit of God's leading it.
When did you know, and this is probably not a fair question, but when did you know that Ryan was ready?
I knew Ryan was ready I knew Ryan was, about 10 years ago I started to hear the Holy Spirit on it. And about 6 years ago I knew he was ready, in that none of us are ever ready, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah. He's ready to go, and broached it with him, and then at the 5-year mark we had a real hard conversation about it. He and Kate went away to hear God on that, and God says, give your life to this city. And it was a profound moment for them. I knew in that moment when they came back and said, God has called us to give our life to this city, that because of that word, this thing was going to work. Because if there's not a word, in fact, everything that I teach about transitions starts with this: there must be a word for a transition. Because if you don't have a word at night when the doubt comes, you put your head on the pillow, you're not going to make it. You got to have a word that you hang on to.
How did you keep politics out of it?
I have to give some kudos to those that are my supervisors. I'm a regional supervisor, superintendent for 4 churches in Southern Oregon, but I'm also what they call a district-wide elder. From Alaska down here, I've got free movement in our group of churches, and there's a trust level that I have. I have a trust equity with them, and I gave them this model that I wanted to do, and my supervisor, Larry Spousta, said, just keep me in the loop. I want to see how this works out. We need a new model.
Wow.
Yeah.
How refreshing.
It was refreshing.
To have that kind of freedom so that you could actually hear the voice of God and go on it.
And I think they understood, too, that I wasn't going to get so far out on this without keeping them informed that I was going to embarrass them or cause shame to the fellowship of churches. So they've given me license, but it's under their covering, and it's been a blessing. All
right, let me get these 2 stacks of books away first, and then I have one other question. Caller number 3 will get God Whispers and the Prayer from the Throne of God, and caller number 4 will get The Good Place and the Leadership Rock, a journey of life and leadership. 541-776-5368. So caller number 3 gets the first stack, caller number 4 gets the second stack. All right, what would you say to the pastor who's beginning to feel, maybe my time is up? What would you say to that? How would you help them qualify that?
I would get trusted friends together to begin to process who they are, go to the identity thing first. I would ask them to discover and maybe even rediscover who they are. And then go back to that verse out of Psalms, delight yourself in the Lord, He'll give the desires of your heart. Get in that process of allowing God to ply you, work you, and then trust that He's going to change your desires. And once that's done, then you can start voicing the fact that I want to make a transition.
How do you make sure that it's not burnout calling them to do this?
I think the trusted friends around you would say, no, you're burned out. Let's get through the burnout before we make this decision.
Well said. Well said. Thank you, my friend.
God bless you.
And congratulations, big weekend. I hope you can get the crowd in. And congratulations to Ryan and Kate Roden, who are now the new senior pastor, will be as of Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been a real model. I'm really, really happy with how you handled this. This is terrific. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.